Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for attending our Lunch and Learn today. We have a great speaker here, Lesley Dunn. Lesley is honored to serve as the Atlantic Regional Ambassador for the Lighted Up for NDEAM on Thursday, October 17th, during National Disability Employment Awareness Month. This campaign is a powerful reminder that persons with disabilities are valuable members of the workforce, and fostering recognition and inclusion is essential for moral engagement and job satisfaction. Living with a hidden disability, Lesley's a passionate advocate for accessibility, inclusivity, representation, and accommodation, particularly in the workplace. In 2021, she founded the Nova Scotia Inclusive Employment Collaborators to help business and government address workforce shortages by leveraging the province's untapped talent pool. She's also grateful for the partnership with AMANS and creating spaces where everyone belongs. I'm just going to share the PowerPoint here. Just 1 second. Can everybody see the PowerPoint? Perfect.
Thank you, Roxanne, and thank you very much, everyone, for inviting me to join you today. October is a very exciting month for the disability sector, and certainly those who are working towards making it more inclusive for persons with disability. So today we're going to talk about a great event that takes place on, oops, typo there. It's actually Thursday, October the 17th, not the 7th. My error, will get that corrected. Lighted Up for National Disability Employment Awareness Month. It is coordinated and led by the Ontario Disability Employment Network in partnership with the Canadian Association for Supported Employment, Mentorability Canada, and Jobability Canada. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to let you know that in this presentation, I have included pictures that were taken from around the province last year and in 2022, because we did have several towns and municipalities that did participate. And of course, we would like to hopefully reach the point where we have all 50 engaged in Lighted Up for National Disability Employment Awareness. So very simple, what is NDEAM? It is celebrated on the 3rd Thursday of October to promote disability employment awareness. And it's a national initiative, which means it takes place from coast to coast to coast. And it celebrates the contributions that persons with disabilities can contribute to the labor market. And that's been one of our really big pushes, especially during the onset of COVID. That was a real turning point for us because we were able to showcase and highlight the gifts that persons with disabilities have to offer the labor force. As Roxanne said, I live with a hidden disability. Well, I'm also quite blessed in that hidden disability. I am a white woman. My pronouns are she, her. And my hidden disability allows me to flow seamlessly through every environment that I encounter. And that's not always the case for others, especially if they have companion restrictions to their disability, and that could be maybe their economic status, maybe their cultural diversity, maybe they are transgender. So there's lots of things that layer into what a person with a disability experiences. Next slide, please. So why does inclusive work matter? Well, I guess one of the biggest things that we found is when everybody's screaming at you that we have labor market shortages, we're here to say there's not a labor shortage. There might be a skills gap shortage in certain industries, but we certainly have lots of laborers from marginalized population groups who are just eager to get into the labor market. So inclusive workplaces build stronger and more innovative teams. There's no doubt about that. You know, just because it's not our way doesn't mean it's not the right way. Everybody brings different strengths to the table, and their creativity enhances the work that we do. It boosts productivity, it improves employee retention and satisfaction. And, you know, you may be sitting there shaking your head, but it actually does. When you have been so desperate to get a job, you are going to do everything possible to retain that job because it's important to your economic and social well-being. It reflects and serves the diversity in our communities. Again, really important. I don't know about where you live, but I certainly know that in my community, which is a fishing village along the Eastern Shore, we have seen extensive growth in the different cultures that are now living within our community. It's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. But those individuals want to see themselves in government, in workplaces, and services that are products that are provided. So we want everything to reflect who we are in this province. It strengthens economic growth, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later. But when we are employed, we're contributing to taxes, we're not relying on social benefits, we're purchasing products and services, homes, transportation, etc. It encourages collaboration. And again, coming out of the impact of COVID-19, the establishment of the Nova Scotia Inclusive Employment Collaborators, which is a volunteer-driven network with 1,600 individuals coming together representing government, all levels of government, the business sector, community environments, employment support specialists, to say, okay, we've got this vibrant group of individuals in your community ready to get to work. Let's find the best way to ensure that we get them matched with the jobs in your business. And also finally, although I don't believe that legislation is the magic wand that makes everything happen, it helps us comply with accessibility and anti-discrimination legislation. And if you've heard me speak at other events, I said, well, you know, the government has tried to legislate lots of things and it has not necessarily worked. And it doesn't work because people really need to trust and believe the process that is taking place. And I would like to leave that with you, just to rest there for a moment as you in your towns and municipalities work towards making more inclusive environments, is that change happens at the speed of trust. Just that simple. You can't force it and you can't push it. Next slide, please, Roxanne. So the Nova Scotia Inclusive Employment Collaborators' mission and vision for Lighted Up for National Disability Employment Awareness is reimagining how people with disabilities connect to meaningful and inclusive employment opportunities. Not only employment opportunities, but life opportunities and experiences as well. And our vision is that we are hoping that there is a future where every person with a disability has equal opportunities to find success in a world of work that is universally acceptable. And beyond being universally acceptable, a world of work of their choosing, not where someone thinks they should be, but somewhere where that individual's heart's desire is to be. Next slide, please. So the tangible benefits of disability inclusive employment include 72% higher retention rate. Remember what I said earlier, once employed, people like to stay there. 30% improved profit margins. Why might that be? Well, funnily enough, persons with disabilities have an extensive circle of influence, their friends, their families, their relatives, who all tend to support businesses where persons with disabilities are hired. So they have an affinity or are drawn to those businesses. 28% higher revenue, again, comes from expanding your customer market. They're 29% more innovative. I don't know about you, but sometimes when you have to find a different way of doing things, either from a visible or a hidden disability, you become far more creative. I broke my ankle. That's not my disability, but boy, oh boy, did I have to have a big learning experience in how I was going to get around. Did I feel sorry for myself? You betcha I did. But I soon realized that, hey, I can do this. I can do things. I'm just going to do things differently. You get a larger market access or consumer base. So in Canada, the untapped economic value of the disability market is $55 billion in disposable income. 55 billion. So the percentage rate of persons with disabilities in Nova Scotia is 37.9. It's the highest rate of disability in Canada. So even if we look at 30% of that $55 billion, imagine what an economic boost that would be to our province. Economic boost means more tax dollars. More tax dollars means that we can invest more in what our communities and our residents need. Higher employment engagement, because we've taken away that you're not like me or you're different than me, where everybody's belonging. So we have higher engagement in the workplace, and higher engagement leads to what? Higher retention. Those two things go hand in hand, and lower absenteeism. That's the other thing the persons with disabilities bring to the workforce, is that their absenteeism rate is very low because they spend more attention to detail in the jobs that they're doing, because they do not want to miss out, especially individuals who are neurodiverse. Once you train a person who is neurodiverse on how to do a job, they are going to do that job to the exact specs that you require. They're not going to cut corners. They're not going to miss pieces along the process. They're going to do it exactly the way that you ask them to do it. Next slide, please. So let's look at the economic value of inclusion. So for the individual and the family, we know that there's improved well-being, that there's a greater earning potential, there are reduced poverty levels, all good things so far. There is a rise in social equality, another good point. Long-term economic sustainability, because we have more tax dollars going back into the community and into the household and into their family, which will lead on for generations. That's the other great thing about the economic value of inclusion, is that that's intergenerational prospers from inclusion. And the broader ripple effect, they're now in a position where they can think of purchasing a home, purchasing transportation, going out, going to a movie, going to a theater production, going to dinner, all the things that they would be excluded from if they were in receipt of social benefits. For the government, to reduce spending on social benefits. Imagine if all the money we were putting into social benefits could be redirected, because people were now happily ensconced in jobs, earning money, which is exactly where they wanted to be in the first place. Reduced healthcare costs, because again, people are now living a better quality of life. Increased hiring talent pool. The number of people that we were able to place during the onset of COVID was phenomenal. In the first 15 days, when businesses started to come towards us, well, the first 30 days in total, 50 people moved into employment, $500,000 savings immediately to the Department of Community Services, because they all came off social assistance, went into jobs that had benefits, and they're all still employed. And that was in 2000, and we are now in 2004, and all those individuals are still employed. To date, we've managed to help over 1,000 individuals, employment-bound individuals who were experiencing marginalization, move into employment simply by working together as a volunteer network. And it's like building that trifecta, right? You've got the person who's the connector, the employment support service provider, and the employment-bound individuals to connect with the employer and to work with the employer during the transition stage. We get higher tax revenues, leading to increased economic growth and increased investor appeal. And people say, well, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, when we look at international companies that we're trying to attract to do business in our communities, we are so far lagging behind their cultural diversity and their embracing of persons with disabilities in the workplace that if they found a city or a town that looked and felt like what they were achieving in their home companies, where do you think they're going to want to come and set up business? They're going to go where they can see impact happening. Next slide, please. So what are some of the barriers to inclusive employment? Well, lack of awareness and education. So thank you for joining us today to help spread the message on inclusive employment. Conscious and unconscious bias. And I consider myself a pretty open and understanding person, but I want to lead you to a resource, and it's called the Project Implicit by Harvard University. And it is an online test for personal biases. And boy, it was an eye-opener. So just because you think you are on the right track and doing the right things all the time, sometimes you need a little check to make sure that you're aware of even some of the smaller things that you might be doing. Physical barriers are another component. We just certainly experienced that with the government of Nova Scotia. They held the provincial volunteer awards. They held them in Truro. They went to a place that was not accessible, considering that one of the persons who was receiving an award had completed a form that said, here are my accessibility needs. They couldn't get into the venue because the accessibility button on the door wasn't working. And then when they went to receive their award, they didn't have an accessible stage. So she was required to accept her award on the floor below the stage where people were looking down on her. Totally took away from that great moment, that great experience for that individual. It was an epic fail, an absolute epic fail, because those components weren't checked when a venue was selected for the awards system. And when we look at barriers in places and spaces, it's really more about not doing it for one person. When we make that simple accommodation, we are actually making an accommodation that works for everyone. Gaps in supports and services are another barrier. The outdated hiring ecosystem. Well, I could spend probably 3 hours talking to you about that, but I will give you the Cole's notes of it. Recruiting platforms and AI they just screen out automatically 94% of job applicants because they're looking for what is not there rather than what is there. And they are programmed right away to screen out anybody who has a gap in their resume of 6 months. Well, if you happen to be a parent with a new baby, you may be taking time off to be at home with that child. If you're like me and you do a lot of contract work, well, it will say, well, she changes jobs a lot. And I'm like, well, I like to go where things interest me. So contract work works really great for me. It's something that I'd like to do. If you're a person who is marginalized, who is really struggling and doing everything you possibly can in order to be able to get into the labor market, it's the system that's blocking you, not your keen interest to become involved. And then financial incentives and disincentives. So a big thing for me is when employment support service providers go out, they're chatting with an employer or they're at an employment job fair. And the first thing that they say to the employer is, oh, by the way, we can give you a wage subsidy for this person. Well, immediately, as soon as we say those words, wage subsidy, we are devaluing the gifts that that person is bringing to the job market. And what we did find during the onset of COVID and even continuing right through to today, we didn't have to talk about wage subsidies because the employers already have the income in their budget to hire the employee. They don't need any extra gifts. And by saying, oh, we have a wage subsidy, the person only gets hired for the period of that wage subsidy. And we don't want that. We want that job to be ongoing. Next slide, please. So why blue and purple? You may have noticed that the Huntington Society did an event in May. They used blue and purple as well. Well, blue and purple are the colors of inclusion and support for people with disabilities. So a lot of the organizations working in the disability sector will do events and activities focusing around these two colors. Purple started off by being associated with International Day of Persons with Disabilities on December the 3rd, and blue is linked to campaigns that highlight accessibility and inclusive employment, like Light It Up for NDEAM. Huntington's did a Light It Up event. That's what their event was called in May. Next slide, please. So what are the 4 advantages of participating in the Light It Up for National Disability Employment Awareness Week? Well, one, most important, we're going to promote workplace inclusion to help build a culture of acceptance and that hiring is universal. We're going to increase public awareness, and I think that that's a really big thing. It helps to educate the public about the benefits of hiring persons with disabilities and the challenges that they may face in the workplace. And again, it's like everything that we are doing now as we move towards 2030, which sadly the province has said they're going to miss that goal as well. The greater awareness that we raise in community, we don't have to wait for the provincial government to legislate something because we can do it by ourselves, one community at a time, one neighborhood at a time. We can help those changes take place, those partnerships to develop, and we can ensure that we have accessible communities across the province. We're going to strengthen community engagement by connecting businesses and organizations and individuals who are passionate about disabilities with the individuals who are looking for employment. One of the biggest questions that I always get as the years go by is, well, how do you find these people? And I'm like, well, they're not people, they're employment-bound individuals. But the first step as an asset-based community developer is you invite people to stand outside their office door or their building and look up and down the street and identify all the community resources that are there within an easy walking distance of your building. And then you go out and start making friends, knocking on doors, having conversations, learning what people to do and how you can work alongside each other to improve the well-being of all those individuals living in your community. And finally, it boosts employer brand and reputation. It enhances the reputation because you're attracting diverse talent, and it improves relationships with customers because that now they see themselves as part of the process, that you're developing products and services that meet their needs, products and services for their family members and products and services for other community partners. I think one of the biggest places that we have a gap in the province, and it was just reiterated yesterday to me, was the post came through one of my Facebook pages that said, I'm picking a friend up who's coming to visit Nova Scotia, and we're going on a tour of the province for a week. We're heading to Cape Breton first. Can somebody please help me identify where all the accessible restaurants and accommodations are? And I've said a lot that when it comes to tourism and culture, we miss that part of the equation by saying, you know, here's the accessible places that you can visit, that you can stay, that you can eat. That's a tourism is a massive market, and we don't share information about what's available in our province. It's hidden. So we need to kind of start digging it out and showing all the beautiful nuggets that we have out there that really meet the needs of diverse population groups in our province. Next slide, please. So anything is possible during the Light It Up for National Disability Employment Awareness campaign. And as you can see, as we've gone through the slides, I've included pictures along the way. But BC Place in Vancouver, the Sheraton Suites in Calgary, Horseshoe Falls in Niagara Falls, Cabot Tower, but it can be as simple as a light bulb in your home or a light in a window in your office. You know, it doesn't have to cost much. It just has to be something to say, let's get involved. And if you don't have a blue light bulb, well, get some paper and cut out blue and purple light bulbs out of construction paper and post it on your walls in your building, or have people take a picture of it. Next slide, please. So 3 ways to get involved. You could illuminate landmarks, buildings, and offices. I think this is cool. The CF-104 Starfighter at the Canadian Warplane Museum. We've really had some terrific shots sent to us. Blessed that the Ontario Disability Employment Network has been kind of gathering all these pictures from across the province for us. This year in Halifax, we're at a slight disadvantage, but not an overly big one. Nocturne is starting their event on Thursday this year versus Friday and Saturday. So we've always been a day in front of them, and now we are like smack in the middle with them. The place will be beautifully lit up, but a little bit harder to differentiate between what is nocturne and what is lighted up for NDEAM. But you know what? The more lights, the merrier. So who cares if we can't tell them apart? We're going to have a beautifully colored city, and that's all that matters. And it celebrates 2 really important things. Use your social media platforms to amplify the message about disability awareness. That's, something that's relatively seamless. It doesn't cost money. Well, it costs your time. So there's a dollar value attached to that part. But it's a relatively easy thing to do. Host or attend an event like we're doing today for employers and employees in the community on how to break down barriers and how to create opportunities for persons with disabilities. I think the biggest thing that we really want to do is take away the fear, right? It's not about eating the whole pie. It's about doing one small thing and building on that. We just keep building and building and building. And eventually, we will live in a world where it is fully inclusive and fully accessible. Next slide, please. So getting started is easy. First of all I got to do is say, yes, I really want to do this. Choose a location. Get approval. That's really important. You guys are in a little bit better situation where you're connected to the administrators for municipalities and towns. A little harder for me on the outside to just say, hey, I'm just going to go down the street and light up this, especially if it's on government property. They may not be too happy unless I knock on their door and say, hey, would you mind? Do you want to participate? Set up your lighting. Again, blue and purple. Spread the word. Engage your community, talk about it, have representatives from your municipality or town, talk to citizens in their community, and then celebrate the day. Snap pictures, send them along to us. And again, some really great pictures taken here. The Esplanade Real footbridge in Winnipeg and the Fitzsimmons covered bridge in Whistler. I think the nighttime shots are just fabulous, because it really helps to showcase what we're trying to do. Next slide, please. So quick facts, as I stated earlier, 37.9% of Nova Scotians live with a disability, the highest rate in Canada. Right on the heels of that, Nova Scotia has the highest rate of mental health disorders in Canada, 41.7%. And so when we look at hidden disabilities, mental health disorders are a big part of that group. And it can be challenging for people in the workplace. If you're looking at, say I'm your colleague right next to you, and you're looking at me, and the first things out of in our conversation, the first words you speak are, well, you don't look like you have a disability. Well, disability looks different for everybody. And especially those with mental health disorders. Very, very different. Estimates suggest that disability in Nova Scotia costs around $2 billion annually in economic losses, including $279 million in excess public service costs and $231 million due to reduced tax contribution, missed economic opportunities, and unrealized business potential. It's a lot of capital there. Lost revenue happens when people with disabilities face barriers to getting jobs, which is why we're here today, earning enough money, which means they pay less taxes. It also includes missed business opportunities when companies don't hire people with disabilities or make their services accessible. One of the things that we look at a lot is, I'm a huge fan of employment social enterprises. They, find the best way to engage marginalized population groups in building their skills in various job sectors, from tourism to food production, construction, you name it. I don't think that there's an area that they don't touch. But employment social enterprises are not available for 98% of business development grants. 98%, that's pretty darn huge. In addition to that, we have such a stellar group of disabled entrepreneurs in this province, most who are receiving support from family members who, again, are struggling to find financial resources to grow and expand their businesses. It's the system that's broke, not what the individuals are trying to accomplish. It's our systems that are broke. So I think that, when we are chatting with folks in our communities, when we're looking at the grants that are available through our relative governments, that one of the things that we could be having conversations about is, well, maybe we would like to explore the number of individuals in our community who are entrepreneurs with disabilities and how we can showcase what they're doing. For the 5th time this year, a woman by the name of Marie Webb, she's a fabric abstract designer here in Halifax, appeared in New York Fashion Week. That's huge, 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 huge. We have another abstract art designer. Her name is just eluding me for a moment. Hannah Hicks, there we go. And her work is in stores right across Canada. Again, trying to get that presence recognized, trying to get businesses to collaborate with her business, Hannah Hicks Art. Bit of a challenge, but the more we raise awareness, the more we make partnerships happen, the more we grow opportunities for our disabled entrepreneurs, the greater strength and connectivity we have in community. So even just starting from a curiosity point, I would encourage you all to go back to your communities and find the hidden treasures that we may not know about and start highlighting them. I think they would be great stories to share. And the same thing with businesses in your community that you feel are doing exceptionally well in delivering diverse products and services. Their venues are accessible. Hint, 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 if they happen to be in the tourism sector and have places that they can, individuals can go and be, we would love to hear that information, because it will attract individuals to our province. Other conversations we've had, certainly with citizenship and immigration, is all the marketing that they do never includes a person with a disability. We never talk about, we invite you to come to Canada, we invite you to move here, we invite you to become employed here, but we never show a person with a disability in any of those images. What does that say? I do not see myself there. So when we look at disability employment awareness, those are the things, those are the images, that's the feel and quality of life that we want to enhance here in our province and across Canada, certainly through Light It Up for National Disability Employment Awareness. Next slide, please. So partners for and some resources. Light It Up for National Disability Employment Awareness, as I explained at the beginning, is coordinated by the Ontario Disability Employment Network. Somebody has to be the keeper of the knowledge across the country, and they are the keeper of the knowledge. It is our 5th anniversary this year, which is also pretty exciting. The Canadian Association for Supported Employment has tremendous amounts of tools and resources, not only for employment-bound individuals, but also businesses. And that is in the resource sheet that Roxanne is going to send out. Mentorability Canada, and again, the Ontario Disability Employment Network lighted up for NDEAM, massive amount of resources there. Public relation kits in English and in French, lots of frequently asked questions answered. They're all on the resource sheet that I have sent out. And the final slide, please. This is Halifax City Hall that was lit up for us, which is quite lovely. You can see the blue and purple and the green is. We were also partnering with another organization that was hosting an event and lighting it up in green. So you can see we can make it work. It doesn't matter, the more colors, the better, I say. But blue and purple are directly related to the disability sector. So thank you so much for joining us. I hope you found the information useful. Happy to answer any questions. I will say just a couple of things that by 2030, more than 25% of our population is going to be 65 years of age and older. The majority of people age into disability. So in the workforce, that's another important thing to remember is that every year that passes is another year that somebody could be aging towards disability. So, you know, how is your workplace going to adjust to those things happen? Yeah. Okay. That's it for me.
Thank you so much, Lesley. That was such a great presentation on the Light It Up campaign. We really appreciate your knowledge that you share with us. One of the things I really liked was the unconscious bias piece that you kind of addressed. The fact that we all have that unconscious bias and sometimes we don't even recognize it. And you did mention a website, and I was just wondering, and even Amelia was wondering, what's the website name again?
It's called Project Implicit. As soon as we're finished this webinar, I will send you the link to it. And when again, it's done by Harvard University. It's been in operation for a few years now, and it breaks down into multiple sectors. So it looks at kind of what are your biases when it comes to ethnicity? What are your biases when it comes to disability? And there's about 10 or 16 mini tests that you can take. They're not onerous. Nobody keeps that information. It's completely private. It's just more of a self-check to see, okay, so I just caught myself on that. I probably wasn't aware as I should be. And I think that as we live and work and grow in this field, I don't want to say we create a lot of animosity, but we're the folks who are doing the checks and balances now that are trying to reframe conversations with people, not by pointing it out, but just reframing the discussion. So hopefully that they will learn by the language that we are using, that this is where we build our, you know, the bricks in the road or the bricks in the house to a more inclusive communities across our province and our country.
Yeah, that's actually a really great resource just for everyone, specifically in municipal staff, to go through that kind of unconscious bias, like that the Harvard University thing that we have over there. So it's just making it more aware of our unconscious bias, and we really appreciate that. One of the things you also mentioned was the AI screening and the screening of the resumes. I had no idea about that. So that's a really fascinating thing to keep mindful of, specifically within organizations who use AI to kind of screen applications. It's important to mention that that's something also we can address in our conversations when we're having with municipal staff, specifically with the equity and anti-racism action plans, as well as the accessibility action plans that are coming up. That's some conversations to have within organizations. one of the things you also mentioned was having a space where you report like accessible places. And AMANS, actually, we have a website called Municipal Ideas. On the website itself, we're able to track any parks and beaches across Nova Scotia that are accessible. We are on the beginning stages of, we have that on the website currently, but we want to develop it even more to have even like hotels, any other recreation centers, and any other
Playgrounds.
playgrounds, exactly. That's like a big, huge key piece that is accessible. So we're getting municipal staff to go onto our website and kind of like pinpoint where are the places that are accessible. So we're happy to share that with you as well. So yeah, Amelia, do you have any questions?
You asked them.
Can I just interject for a couple of things? So one of the things that I love the idea that you're collecting the information about accessible places and activities in your community. The one thing that I would recommend is that you make sure to have somebody who is from the disability sector go with you, because what one person may think is accessible, the other person may not. And that becomes one of the challenges that we face with the universal access sign for accessibility. It's a person in a wheelchair. And even though it is a universal access sign, people automatically assume that disability represents a person in a wheelchair. And that's only 1% of the population. But it's the United Nations who created it as a universal access sign. So again, it's just changing the language around that. So we need to be mindful about that. HR certainly would like to have larger conversations about what's happening in HR, because the AI and the recruitment platforms are screening out millions and millions of applicants a day. So I know as soon as COVID started, one of the components that was started up was called the Nova Scotia Business Labor Coalition. And it had representatives from all levels of government and businesses really looking about how do we keep the Nova Scotia economy moving forward when pretty much everything has had to shut down. And every time we were in these meetings, and we were meeting every day for at least an hour during the first part of it, was labor shortage, labor shortage, labor shortage. And I'm pretty sure I was henpecking them the whole time going, it's not a labor shortage. We have labor. We just want you to start thinking differently about the hiring ecosystem, which is why we want to encourage community connections, right? That collaboration at the community level. The majority of communities have some form of employment support activity or employment social enterprise who can work with the employers to bring people into their workforce and to make it a seamless transition, because not only do you connect the relationship between the employer and the employment support service provider, you're also getting the supports that come with that from the employment support service provider. You know, if there's a hiccup or a bump in the road, you know, how best do I work with somebody on my team who's autistic? Well, that employment support service provider can provide you with the tools and resources and training. And it also allows us to have conversations about what accommodation in the workplace looks like. One, the majority of accommodations don't cost anything. But two, helping them understand that accommodation can also be a person who is accompanying that employment support, the employee, sorry, especially if they have a language or communication barrier. And it's not that the support person or the accommodation, because the accommodation, that person becomes a tool, they're not there to do the job. They're there to help the individual you've hired to do the job. So you're only paying for the individual that you've hired to do the job.
Great, thank you so much. Any other questions? Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time as well as your commitment to sharing more about the Light It Up campaign. We'll share the resources via email after this lunch and learn. And also this recording will be up on YouTube, so everyone will have access to it, as well as our Municipal Ideas website.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
The recording here.